Right. So I have always just sort of tried to follow my own instincts with things. I'm showing this really early work. I think I was 15. It was back in 1970. It was a long time ago. And I would just sit and draw these things. I would just make them without any real training. And these are really tiny little things. You can see the dime there. I used to decorate them and leave them by the riverbeds in Kansas for people to find. Just things that popped into my head, you know. Y'all hear me okay? Awesome. Again, dime for scale. So the reason I'm showing these is because I feel as though what David and I did unintentionally was bring these things to life, the colors, the shapes. Nothing really complex there, but another one. And clearly my inspirations, like pop culture of the era. I wasn't using any drugs. People insisted I was.
We both get that.
We both get
that.
Yeah. And clearly, I think I was maybe 14 when I did this one. So this, I'm moving right into the 80s. This is when I did a small theater group, a puppet group. We just got together spontaneously and said, let's tell stories. It was kind of at the beginning of the epidemic era. And I lost all those people. But we did these really, sorry, it's so small. We did these really fun things. We construct the puppets on stage and use original designs and tell stories with them. Did that for 3-4 years. And comedy, humor, essential, especially in those days. Then I moved into lots of loss, losing people. My art changed a little bit. And we'll just fast forward to when I met David, my partner here. We've been together 28 years. And, you know, when we met, I was really not in the best physical health. And I lost tons of people. I knew lots of people that worked with the Coquettes, did theater and ad hoc, just comedy, just fun, very innocent, really. And by the time I met David, I'd lost those people 3 or 4 times over. So we moved into this mode where when my health was really terrible, David would say, well, what would you like to do? I said, let's take pictures. And it was around when I nearly lost my eyesight due to something, a condition I have. So let's take pictures. Let's just take photographs. And this is the beginning kind of.
Yeah.
We did go to clubs and just do basic, you know, gender fluid drag and all that stuff, but we never performed on stage. We just like to be in the audience over here, ladies and gentlemen, and others.
Because I think fabulous people on stage deserve that fabulous audience. It's about, you know, what you bring to the events that you're participating in is a big part of it.
Definitely. So I'm going to whiz through. I brought a lot of images. This started, so what happened was we didn't have a conscious idea. We just kept taking snapshots, and I don't use special cameras. I've used point and shoot cameras. I'm not a technician. But the key to it was to be, it sounds a bit cliche, but to be literally in the moment, because I didn't know how long I was going to be here. And I wanted to document this person's life while I was here. This is Sydney, Australia. And I went into sort of a, I'll show you the pictures.
And I hadn't done drag before I met Michael. So really it was his fault. You know, I wanted to keep him connected to the people that he had lost. You know, it was such a big part of our life at the time. And it evolved from that. It morphed into other things. But, you know, that was initially, it was this very tight collaboration between 2 people who were making work for themselves. But we liked what we were getting back. It was like from the very beginning, I was like, did I look like that for that photo? It's like, so we felt like there was something there. And then we just, you know, we took our time nailing down what it was. I think that's a really important thing, is you don't have to know what the meaning is in something, but you should just trust your instincts when you feel you're onto something. And I think that's a very direct way that we work, you know, together on a lot of stuff.
And not having done any kind of costume or drag it was really interesting how quickly David took to the variances and the variables of what you see here. So this is basic Mrs. Vera. We're in Australia. The other thing, the sort of subtext for me is that Vera's my muse, but she's also my psyche. You know, there's isolation, wariness. Mrs. Vera's alone in the daybook series because we were very isolated. And I didn't hammer people over the head with that. She just happened to be somewhere all by herself. No one knew mine. So I'll move on here. Again, beginning times. This one sort of addresses illness a little bit. But I like to do it with humor because there were times I was stuck in bed for months, weeks. So I just wanted to change that, recontextualize it, because we were surrounded by so much darkness. And I get all the dark AIDS art and all the rest of it, but that is not what I'm here for. And we needed joy.
You know, it was part of our life, but we didn't want it to define our life or our work. You always, you know, the interest in color and joy for you is, I think, primary in most of what we do. And I have like similar, but, you know, contrasting things. So it's a real genuine collaboration that way. He gets me to places that I wouldn't be otherwise. And I think, you know, it's a mutual experience.
We did not anticipate the series running so long. Now I have thousands of photographs. Not a bad thing. But again, I got into these. It's a funny picture. And at the same time, what happened? I leave the stories open-ended. I don't try to narrate it. This is one of my very favorites. It's about long-term survival. You're too young to be tossed out. If you're tossed out, it's called Mrs. Vera's nap. And by the way, that's a Betsy Johnson dress she's wearing.
Yeah, so it's you know, we really tried to find ways to you know, expand on what we were experiencing. And you know, the drag and the makeup and all that stuff was just, it was like another medium that we hadn't really expected to find ourselves working in. But it was just very natural, and it grew you know, rapidly into something that had its own kind of momentum.
At a certain point, we look at the snapshots, and I wasn't printing pictures. My eyes were really bad. We get snapshots, and we started saying, well, there's something in here. We really had no idea what. We just did it for fun, as I did with all the other things earlier. I just wanted to have some fun. This one really resonates for me still in this day and age. And then we get into things like this. Where is she? Is she disembodied? Is she part of mythology? That's up to you to decide. I just like, we had fun taking that picture. Get in the water. He did it. And here we have Daphne.
So that wig is made out of hair combs. I found a big bag of them at a Goodwill, you know, so that's sort of how we worked, is we would look for odd things in enough quantities to, you know, make an item of clothing out of. And that's the basic, you know, premise for everything that followed.
The color faces came very quickly. I didn't know people in the Cockettes, but I knew about them. And that was a troupe of hippie artists, performers. And I said to David, well, if we're going to do this, first of all, let's change your look in a way, and let's wear things that you don't see in a conventional photograph. So we'll move into that. This is Daphne. She's turning into a tree. Fog bouquet we shot really early in the morning. Flowers with a floral print with real flowers behind her.
We don't have fog here anymore, but we did back then.
It's true. This could be a picture of the last remaining fog in San Francisco. Okay. Melbourne. We would travel. We would take, I had an Australian friend, an entertainer friend who we costumed. And as a result, he would fly us over to Sydney and Melbourne to see the shows with the costumes. So here's Mrs. Vera at the beach.
This is a good example of a costume there's not really much to it. It's kind of off the rack. So we're just sort of mixing and matching things that we have found, as opposed to customizing them, which is what we really, you know, is the more signature look, where we start with one of these things and then we work with the pattern or just against the pattern with unexpected materials and sort of transform these things that, nobody knows what to do with anymore, but they exist, into something that we can use in a way that feels appropriate.
Yeah, the other thing I'll say is a lot of our frameworks we don't sew. They're existing costumes or outfits that David embellishes with hot glue and things like that. Because this stuff's all discarded, it's all tossed out. We thought it would be fun to redo them. I love murals. We love doing things with murals, but you can see a more complex costume here. That doll on top is battery operated and she dances.
Yeah, I think it's funny how we end up making things even though we don't have the skill set that one should have if they're making clothing. We really don't sew. I don't have a sewing machine. I'm doing these jackets now and I'm like hand sewing, but there's very little construction involved. And yet they feel like that's a big part of it. And that's just in how we choose to alter them or, embellish them.
And on materials, again, I was sick for a really long time, and there were times I was fairly mobile. And when we were, I jumped in the car and we'd go hit thrift stores across the bay, and things were much, much cheaper then. Nobody wanted these things. So we didn't know what we were creating. We just find things, but that could be interesting, this or that or the other. And we sort of encourage each other. Straws were everywhere. Ubiquitous dollar stores had all this trash in there. And, I don't think it's ever going to go away. But we tried to encourage people to see if there's something else they can do with it before they get rid of it. And they can look fabulous too. This one's really great. Which one is that, David?
That's from Folsom Street.
Is that the hair combs?
I wouldn't know what to call it.
As you can see, we sort of went into more extreme directions. And we love to be really, really out there for Folsom Fair. I don't like to be predictable. So this is one of David's Folsom Fair outfits. Here she is.
This Folsom Street's great because it's an opportunity to really do anything that you can conceive of. And there's not a lot of places that have events like that where you've got this built-in audience that is just, it's not going to judge you harshly. You might like it or it might not like it, but it's welcome. So that's a very San Francisco thing. And that's, I think, the character of the city is something that we really think about with our work and how we want the city to look more like we want it to, and instead of the opposite alternative.
So again, the thing I mentioned before about Vera is she's on her own, even at street fairs. She's by herself. It was very intentional. But then we would have fun with murals on the way. It's all point and shoot. And whatever I see in front of me, we don't set these up. Natural light, a halfway decent little camera, and wonderful views.
And we started making the costumes, but just to sort of I'm also train of thought. The thing about the materials that we use are that they're sort of rejected and inappropriate and unwanted. And I think that adds like a real, friction to what you're looking at. And it's just a lot of contrasts that we're always trying to go for. Like, is it pretty or is it not pretty? Or, is that like scary or not scary? And people kind of have to decide themselves, since we're sort of very recognizable whenever we're in drag. We very seldom do the same look twice. And I've made stuff that I've never even worn. So it's, but other people have. So that's part of it.
And we'll move into the other people pretty soon. Some of them are over there. So again, the series, we wanted whimsy. I don't want to get into all the details, but I nearly bought the farm 5 times from different illnesses, but every time I just bounced back magically. Thank you, science. I picked up the camera because of my eyesight issues and did not expect to be here doing this.
Yeah, our poor health was like extremely motivating. It was in the early years, we really didn't have much of a prognosis. So it was, it was grim. But we didn't want to waste our time that we had doing something that wasn't satisfying. And, this photo series really ended up being the thing that we could do with the energy that we had, and get a result that made us feel like we were like active artists still.
And prior to that, before meeting David and the earlier years, the 80s and the 90s, I did a couple of zines with people. I go out and shoot punk show events, things like that, just to get the energy, to pick up on the energy and feel alive, literally. So, it was great meeting David because I got to continue with the camera. Wholesome fare. Do you think? Again, it was a chance, just spontaneously comes up. And the costumes have been received really well. They weren't initially, like 25 years ago. There was a little bit of like, it's not Mardi Gras, it's not Halloween, but not a lot of people. And I was sort of like, well, yeah, I know that.
Well, I think back then it's like, drag that was challenging or provocative was pretty rare. Like most people's relationship to it had a different set of expectations. But that being said, Lee Bowery was around. There were some people that were doing like really strange things with their look, not just trying to, do an illusion of something else. And that was always where we were happiest, just sort of making something, very unexpected. Yeah.
And it wasn't really even about gender politics. David always says drag, and I always say costume. I have no aversion to the word drag, but I feel that what we do is more along the lines of, clearly putting a look together that's unique, and you happen to be Mrs. Vera is a female identified character.
But is she female? In some of the photos, it's pretty irrelevant, if nothing else. But we kept, for a long time, we did not want to like commit to like a background for this character. It doesn't really have like a staged performative, conception behind it. But we liked that people would see different things in it. So we tried to keep the symbolism as open as possible while making, things stranger and stranger, and then just sort of letting people figure it out.
Yeah. So the next few are just us out and about, and some of the things I made for myself to wear. That's a lovely couple for Folsom Fair, wouldn't you say? And responses got better and better and better. But I keep in mind that when we were doing this all those years ago, things were dark. The politics around identity and queerness and gayness were visceral. And I participated. I did all the ACT UP things. I did all the demonstration stuff as long as I could. But something just made me do this instead, and I felt better.
Okay.
Take that.
Yeah, I mean, they're pretty hard to describe. I mean, and it's a little pointless to try, but that's the desired effect, is when that's usually when I stop. Same in my painting. Painting is finished when it's sufficiently mysterious that I don't understand what's going on in it anymore. And these costumes are similar, and people really want to figure it out. But it's really just the experience of seeing it. That's the bulk of the artistic commitment. We don't have anything for sale. It's not a commercialized product. We're not in galleries. It's very odd, and yet we're kind of well known in this, small circle. But it's because we've been doing it for 25 years, and it's just it's interesting to occupy an odd space, and it's been kind of great in a way, because since we're sort of outside of most of the traditional academic or art world systems, we're not beholden to anyone. So we can really do exactly what we want without having to accommodate anybody else's needs or interests. And that is, I tell you, that is an amazing space to be able to work in.
It is indeed. I also like to tell people if they say, "What are you?" I say, "Well, we're like little insects or creatures that you see us go by, and if you see us, good for you. And if you don't, we'll look different next time." I really like tapioca straw and fuzzy furry things. And the other thing is too that Burning Man was definitely happening, but not in the way that it took off. And I think a lot of really great, if you will, queer energy is there, lives there, and there's a real energy to it, you know. And I've been a couple of times and I loved it. So I was happy to see that happening around us. Things were changing. The world was changing. The world we occupied was changing.
And you'll see in the photos that come that like we're almost always working by ourselves, or I'm alone or whatever. That was very much, you know, where we were at when we started. But it did expand in a lot of ways as we got a little more familiar, and we met a group of people that were of like mind. And that's when it really kind of expanded into something else. And it's you know, then that's well, we'll get there when we get there.
So this little section here is mostly about the construction of things. And David is very brilliant about using different materials. And as you can see, it's a ready-made jacket, but what goes into making that are a number of different elements. So I'm just going to go through this to let you get a sense of, oh, look at him, what we like to do. Plastic Easter eggs, things people throw away, a lot of discarded stuff. One of my favorite looks. Scare them. And we also like to go, I would shoot with David. I don't have a lot in here, but Golden Gate Park was a great place for us when I was recovering. It was a great place. You could walk around. People were out there. You know, if you can't see it in San Francisco, where else are you going to see it? You know, so we just take pictures and enjoy ourselves. This is a beautiful one.
That thing was so loud. Those cups, like if you're indoors, it's like literally like you could hear it like a mile away. It's crazy.
I'm going to go on record and say it was my least favorite.
I know.
Looks beautiful though. Another one, again, hula hoops. I'll let you.
Yeah, it's yeah, those are eyeballs all over it. So it's like an Argus dress. But again, it's something we found in a thrift store, and you know, we just accumulated these unwanted objects and you know, use them to, you know, express ourselves through fashion, which is, you know, really what we're doing is, what I like to do is I just like to give people permission to do something crazy. So I always make sure I'm as crazy as possible so that it's easier for them. It's like I've done the worst thing possible, so they can do something else instead. And people love it. They, you know, creativity is not, you know, appreciated as much in this culture as I think it should be. And people actually need permission to do these things, to express themselves, to be different, or to stake some territory. So we're sort of like a roadmap for that sometimes.
One of my favorite things is it's made of coffee stirrers, lots and lots of them, and it's an elasticized material. It's a vest. I love that piece because you're like a porcupine, and it makes a really interesting sound.
And that's just two materials, you know, in that look. So initially we would do these very kind of simple things. I always thought of the costumes as props for the photos. That was my main interest, but they survived because they're so plastic that they would remain in good shape. And so they just had a continued life beyond what I had originally envisioned.
So this is one of my favorite hats, and I'm going to show you kind of how he made the hat first, I believe. But then this came along, and this is the daybook photo I shot using those things. So it was like setting up the costume for something. We weren't sure where we'd end up. This was at somebody's house with a cuckoo clock.
It was always a kind of random factor. We would put these looks together and, without even like looking at them in the mirror, we would just go out and try and find places that, interacted with them. And, it just always kind of worked. Whatever combination you wore, you'll eventually find something where it's compelling scenario.
Boots are great to cover up with stretchy materials. We love doing that. We're going to move into people wearing our things soon. I just wanted you to see some of the sort of the genesis of these things, how they got started, and then how they got worn, if you will. That one's what? Cups? Salsa cups?
Salsa cups.
Community. Okay, this is where we start getting into community. I've always loved community. I've worked with community for a good part of my life. And we started doing free street events and things like that. We met some wonderful people there. A lot of our core group we met there. So our participation involved, maybe this one we had a booth and we'd have all these sheets and things to wear, backdrops, so people can take pictures of themselves. Where's the camera? Well, you've got a phone, haven't you? So
yeah, and that wheel had a whole bunch of, ridiculous prizes on it, like a binder clip or a Brussels sprout. So it was free to play, but you would just win this really horrible prize. And then we would dress you up. And that was like, we had stuff for people to put on. And at the time people would try and figure out what's going on here, but it's a little surreal. And it's kind of like, tell us. It's like we've just given you a slice of cheese, and have a good day.
yeah, but at the end of the day, what people screamed when that wing was spinning was binder clip. We want binder clips. This is again community. This is where our friends are starting to wear our costumes. This was an event at the Academy of Sciences, an annual pride thing they do. We sort of try our costumes out. This fellow was completely delighted with this look, as were we. He made that hat himself in one of our workshops. How are we doing with time? Are we okay, Greg? Again, now some people are wearing things they made at the workshops, or they combined, things with things we've loaned them. And it's...
Yeah, we used to, the interest was that a lot of people wanted to kind of wear these amazing costumes that I've made. But it's moved into, people being responsible for their own looks more. And, our group is really amazing in that, a lot of them have the bug and the drive that we had to when we started. So it's a real, it's nice to know that you've impacted people and have left some kind of an impression on them. And, I'm just so grateful for our friends who participate in this. It's very validating.
Well, as David said earlier, people, like to have permission. So we'll move into that stuff. This is from earlier. Events, public events. We'd invite our friends and say, do you want to wear our costumes and show up for this, fundraising auction or any number of things. So the synergy starts. Mrs. Vera is not alone as much. She's got actually at the end of the day, when you see the rest of the photos, you'll see that she and I have a tribe. There's one of our lovely, that's Isabel over there. So people really got into it. This person made their own gloves. I think there's our Cynthia. She's right there. Yeah. Say. So it gives you a sense of it. So suddenly, she's not on her own. We're not isolated. And it's celebratory. I mean, these are mostly, these keep on, it's celebratory. They are about joy and about finding joy, even if it's just wearing a silly costume and letting yourself laugh.
One of the great things about drag is that there's safety in numbers. And it's you can be really crazy. And you don't really want to do that on your own. I mean, there's a lot of, if I was in San Francisco, I don't know that I'd be going downtown all the time to drag, but we can do it here. So we do it here. And when you get a group of people together doing it, it's really it's visually arresting, and it's also people just want to figure it out. They think something has to be for sale or being promoted, or they have just such a conditioned response to seeing art in the street that we like to provide an alternative to those preconceptions.
This is another one of our public events. I don't know if we have the clothing there or a photo booth. And I do remember that these three young fellows came along. They were zipping through the clothing on the rack, looking at this. Oh, let's go with that. How much are these? No, well, they're not for sale, but you can try them on and take a photo. I love to make people laugh. I love the interaction. And this, again, to community, I did a senior LGBT workshop. And this lady was so wonderful. She's very Irish. We're going to be in the Pride Parade, and we're wanting hats, but we're not wanting old lady hats. We're wanting hats like yours. So we had workshops, and it was delightful. It was one of my favorite things to do. This woman is amazing. She was knocking those hats out like nobody's business. There she is. Lovely.
Yeah, she made like, I think 10 hats. Like other people there made like one tiny little hat. It was a very interesting group of people to work with, because they all had, none of them had made a hat before. They were all in for it, and they all had a really good time. And they ended up expressing their personalities in their hats, just from, a 2-hour event.
This was something we did with a community group that had a big space for a summer. And one of the events we had was tea and hats with Mrs. Vera. So people had tea. It was basically to socialize. They could wear the hats, they could look at the shoes wherever they want.
Bill Bowers was showing with us there. So that's one of his tapestries. And he's been making like really eccentric clothing since the 70s. So he's kind of one of our big inspirations. So it was great to do a show with him.
Yeah, it really was. And there are people enjoying their hats. This was the Oakland Museum. We were invited to a sort of I forget the theme of it, but
it's a maker fair.
A maker fair of sorts. And every couple of weeks they'd have different artists. They let us put our work in. We had a video of the fashion show. We did workshops there. People made really fun things. They put some of our creations in their little vitrines. There's Vera all set up. And we also did it's online how-to for shoes, how to transform them, how to change them safely. And David and I put this one together.
That's one of the things that's really changed, because it used to be if you wanted a pair of crazy shoes, you were not going to find it easy to find a pair big enough, let alone interesting. So these customizing, shortcuts, hacks were great, but now it's just the drag is just so different. It's like they make shoes that you can just order, and it's great. But I still kind of like the really unique item clothing instead of just the memorable one.
Okay, this is Yerba Buena, where we did shoe makeovers. We called it a soul makeover. And people brought shoes to decorate and wear. The reason I had people decorate shoes is because if you're going to be in a parade and march all the way down Market Street, don't wear those spiky heels, they'll kill you.
And that was great. In that, at first, like a lot of people were making shoes. There were a lot of shoes made that night. But by the end of the night, people who hadn't really thought to bring shoes or whatever, they were just making things. So like the whole Yerba Buena thing was just filled with people sitting on the floor, but for glue guns, gluing like doilies to, plastic containers until they kicked us all out.
And I love this photo because it really speaks to what I see about creating community. You have people, all different kinds of people across the table from each other. And the question is, should I use pom-poms or ribbon? Everything else sort of melts. People are, I don't know how to explain it. It's very euphoric for me. Taking that shot from above was delightful because I could just feel the energy. Oh, she was wonderful. And again, these are some of the things they made, that we made. This was a tactile show for visually impaired. I don't know if it was, they call it the Library for the Blind or the visually impaired now. It was a tactile show, so everything was obviously tactile, but we also had shoes and boots and gloves and a talking book, so people could, you know, pull something out and touch it and feel it, and then we had a talking book that explained what we made.
Yeah, and that concept for that show, which one of our Verasphere members sort of had the idea for, I wasn't sure that would really work. Our stuff is so colorful and you know, about what it looks like. But I was really surprised because people have different levels of sight impairment, and it was just amazing how much people would get out of it, even though I know they couldn't really, you know, see them the way, you know, they looked. Yeah, it was just great to get that kind of response from total strangers.
The other thing about some of the pieces we had in that show is they made sounds like that one yellow thing there. The sleeves they make a beautiful sound, those straws and things. So we encourage people to touch them, and you know, and there were varying levels of sight that people had, but the tactile responses were wonderful. It was very moving. This is the very beginning of our Pride thing, where our friends, well, I'll just tell you that the 2 nights before I was in the ER, and that's me in the middle of the bald head, and David on my right, yeah. And it was just going to be he and I going to the parade. I mean, my friends were decimated. There was nobody around. And my friend Cameron in the red wig and his partner next to him and his friend John called and said, "Hey, we got these nighties for $1 in Baltimore, and we'd like to come march with you." And I said, "Let's go." This is the beginning. We didn't have a name. We really didn't have anything aside from, let's find a crew, a float, a club, anything.
And I think that's like 95 or 96. The parade was a really great political parade, but it wasn't necessarily as much fun as it could have been, just because of the times. And a lot of people who were like, you know, they're really great drag queens in town, they often left town because it's, you know, traffic's a nightmare. And it was just, we just felt like let's not, you know, we have to make the parade better. Someone's going to have to do it. So, so we just sort of drifted into that.
It's true. And Cameron and Dale have marched with us for 25 years. They come from wherever they live. This is very early costumes we wore to the parade. These are my photographs of my friends. When I was smaller, I could get more sort of portraits, if you will. And I loved it because you could just feel the energy, and that's one of my favorites. The woman in red was wearing skates and couldn't skate to save her life and was not wearing her glasses. So her escort was sort of bound to her. I love that photo. Again, people waiting around, more events. So you can see how it changes. The costumes get a little kookier. Some people do standard, what one would call drag, but a little off center. But as it moves along, the crowd gets bigger. And it's street. I mean, I don't think of it as theater, but you see this walking down the street, you're like, what the hell is going on here?
And you know, that outfit cost about $20 to make, the one with all the IKEA storage containers. They were on sale, so I bought a bunch, and then it's like, well, I could just make this into an outfit. And that was at the beginning, we make something in just an afternoon. Now they're a little more time and labor intensive, but I loved the effects that we could get with just, you know, safety pins and hot glue and some stuff we just bought.
Oh, I love that one. It's all plastic cups. What does somebody call you? Cup dude? Hey, cup dude. Sure, why not? Again, our crew here, some of whom have marched with us for a long time. We always try to get a family portrait if we can. This thing's amazing in motion because if you spin, they all fan out. I love that piece. Sarah. The other thing is too, we have a lot of men, women, transgender, children. What I love when we really get into the more unusual costumes is it doesn't matter who's under there. I like using hoops and things to change the shape because of all this body consciousness that people have. So if you wear something with a big hoop around it, it doesn't matter if you're skinny or if you're a little bigger, you're wearing a hoop and it's funny and you're with your crew and you're part of it if you are up for it. And that's been the best part, the feedback we've gotten from people. Oh, I see that notorious pink suit over there, Mr. Works. So we go, you know, she's got a tribe. She was on her own. And she, you know, we created a tribe. This one's really complex, what, 3 hoops?
Yeah, I mean, I use a lot of hula hoops in my stuff because I just like the way it changes the silhouette so simply. It's a good starting point.
The costumes get more complex. As soon as the film is set for streaming, I'll put the word out because it really goes more into it. Winding down pretty soon here. Again, the parade, that's the back of the outfit, which I always want people to see. It's like
A little something
from
extra
this,
from behind.
right? From this to this. And the banner that our lovely friends made for us, surprised us with one year. I totally love. And I'm just going to go, we're almost done here. I'm just going to show you something that I worked on personally. I only have one of them. It's my queer warrior helmet because of the current politics and you know, there's so much negativity going on, gender issues and sexual freedom, if that's a word anymore. You know, identity politics are under attack. So I decided it was time to make a queer warrior helmet out of a football hat. So that's my current thing. I made 3 or 4 of them. They speak to me about protection and aesthetics anyway. You know, like it's solid. You can't, you know, it's totally solid. Who's under there? You know, and I feel very protective of those. I wore a couple of those to Folsom Fair. And I'm going to move into a project. I'll preamble it, David. During COVID, we started doing these jackets, or David did. And also David was selected to create the first mural dedicated to HIV survivors, not to people that were passed, but to people that are here. And it's in a sort of a LGBTQI senior center, really nice new building. They had 24 people submitted things.
Yeah.
They narrowed it down to 6. They voted again, and they voted for David.
You know, I started out as a painter. I went to college for that. And I've done that most of my life. The last 10 years, really seen it move into first the Verasphere stuff and now these jackets that I'm making, because that's where the interest was. So it just made sense to let those things develop. So I hadn't done a painting, a big painting in several years when this commission came up. But it was such a great organization that we you know went ahead and did an application and won it, and it was great. I spent a lot of COVID painting that mural, and in a way I had a lot more time because the building was closed than I would have otherwise. But yeah, it felt really good to create you know a big old painting again after having not done it for several years.
Yeah. A lot of the artists that proposed things were definitely thinking along the lines of people that weren't here so much. And then also with the gender politics, they wanted this kind of person to be represented, and you're leaving this out and that out. So what I think the curating committee, there were 3 different ones, liked about this is that it's not about your color, or it's about who are you, who's your person, are you having fun? And David did a beautiful job of conveying that.
It's called the scenic route. So I don't know. It's a little hard to tell because the photo, it's hard to get a straight on shot of it because of the way it's situated. But basically my solution was to have everybody coming from their own starting point and ending up at their own different destination. And that, each person's experience of surviving what they've been confronting is unique. Yeah, I think it kind of captured that idea, and I was happy with it.
And I, of course, love that it's in a community center. I love that it's a gathering place, and it was a new one as opposed to some funky old thing that people were just sort of relegated to. I love the fact that it's fresh, and for people that, well, like myself, that have been around 60 odd years, to be kind of reminded you're not alone, and you still can have fun. I like that shot of you, David. It is really a little hard to see that there's so much detail in this thing. It's very delightful. It's about participation.
And it's a little difficult to come up with something that celebrates something so grim. So I do think we both always used humor in our work, and it's often a hard sell to incorporate humor into what you do, but it's always been a part of our aesthetic. And I think it lets you look at things that are, hard or unpleasant to look at in a kind of like a very forgiving way to get there.
And these are the last two based, but I just wanted to show you that we're wearing these jackets, but David got onto making these using recycled materials, old t-shirts. We get commissions, people bring in their rock and roll shirts, and we embellish whatever they way they wish. And sometimes he'll have some made on a rack and people just buy them. And again, community, it's a street thing on Noe Street, a little art mart. So we do sell things now, but at a very street level, we're not interested in stores.
Yeah, the jackets are actually a lot like the costume stuff that we make in a moderated form. I'm still using things that don't really go together. Like you don't really get Mickey Mouse and Darth Vader, any kind of intellectual property together. It's never going to happen, but it happens on these jackets with a lot of regularity. So it's unexpected materials juxtaposed and kind of collaged together into a really unique item. And people just tell right away that it was not mass produced. It was not, there's not more than one of these. There could only be one of them. And I love that they have that kind of impact.
So that is the last shot. And I just, I'm glad I got to show you these. I hope we were making some comprehensive sense. And any questions or moderator? Gotcha.
And thank you both. That was just wonderful. And I am wearing one of their jackets. Just I know it's obvious, but I feel like I need to call them out. Do we have any questions from the audience? Yeah.
What's the origin of Mrs. Vera's name?
So for the people on Zoom, the question was, what's the origin of the name Miss Vera?
Well, there was a designer of scarves and linens from the late 50s through the early 80s. And she had this big, bold, colorful palette. And on our first trip after we met, we went back to Wichita, and I hadn't really gone to thrift stores before. So again, it's all good. I found this thing from, that was designed by her, this shirt. And I'm like, why do I love this so much? And Mike was like, oh, well, that's Vera. She was, great in the 70s, really fabulous. So then I just started seeing it everywhere. And it's like I would go into a thrift store and I could just see where the 9 Vera items were. So we accumulated all of these things. And then at some point we just decided, well, maybe Mrs. Vera would be a good name, since that's sort of referencing that. And we added Vera Newman later. But for a long time, we just we just didn't want to nail that character down. We wanted it to stay a really open symbol. But that was definitely a tribute to that scarf designer that I just love her work so much.
Yeah, I always have. The thing I like to mention about Vera Newman is that she was a pioneer in independent design. She signed her name to things. Perry Ellis was her understudy. She did things way ahead of other people. And when someone ripped off her design using her name, she sued successfully. But as a businesswoman, amazing. I think there's a documentary about her. There's two good books. She traveled, do sketches, and make the most amazing scarves. And the way that were printed in those days was not simple. So I love that, and I love that he was into Vera. And I said, but it's got to be Mrs. because our character's got background.
Yeah, she was very inspirational in that she had this big company that she kind of ran. It was a family-run company, and she just had like total freedom to do what she wanted to do. So she would make paintings every day, and then her design team would turn them into these, very sellable fashions. But I just love that she was able to do what she wanted, and then it would be turned into something else. And so that's an inspirational component of work as well.
And from, if you will, a fashion and commerce perspective, her work always reminded me of what the Art Nouveau artists did. They wanted work that everyone could see. The posters were all over the place. The art was, meant to be for everyone. She had a lot of different markets, but you could get her stuff at J.C. Penney's, Marilyn Monroe, and seven of them. You could get it at Hermès. I mean, it was across the board. And I just always thought it was wonderful because as a woman, I felt like she was not appreciated, just not appreciated as much as she could have been. We done?
Yeah.
Any other questions for anyone?
Well, I was blown away when I saw you all at the parade with your, like hundreds of people. And pictures are on my phone. I looked at them all. I used to work in Chicago with an artist named Nick Cave, who worked with the same kind of accumulation of materials, but your reason for doing things and like your community focus is on the opposite of things, right? His works are going into museums and you don't touch them, you don't wear them.
Yeah.
But I kind of would love to see your work together. That seems like it would be really interesting. But have you thought about, what do you do with all of these pieces?
There's a storage unit somewhere in Treasure Mountain. Can I just say that is one of the things as artists I would like to address. Art equaling artifacts. As you get older, where do you put it all? Where does it all go? I'm not going to go deep with that, but it's just a realistic thing. We've made so many costumes. And now when we do the workshops, from this point on, it's like, make whatever you're making and please take it home because we can't maintain it, and really quickly, because I know that's a wee Scottish lassie over there, from Glasgow. Well, I'll tell you something. I grew up in Edinburgh, Scotland, and it dawned on me, I was at the festival a few years ago. It dawned on me as a youngster, I spent a lot of time. Back then you could go downtown on your own. So month of August is Edinburgh Festival. And I go downtown and be on my own, walking around, maybe 9 or 10 years old. I saw people in tutus, and I saw, clowns, and I saw people on stilts. And given the times I was living in, it was really wonderful. There was no reason for it. They were handing out flyers for their shows. And you see them en masse along Princess Street. And it dawned on me the last time I was there, I was like, I think this is where I got this from. I do. I just think I did this. We're going down the Royal Lounge. This is beautiful. And there's this clown on stilt. And I was with my Australian friend. I said, that's the damnedest thing. I just realized why we do what we do.
Yeah, Nick Cave is amazing. Of course, we love his work. I didn't really know his work until we were well into what we were doing, but there's so many similarities. And I do think like his stuff did have a really public component as well. It's just the nature of the thing, and success is that, you know, it ends up in a different place, but they were wearable and they had sound effects. And, you know, I felt like it was very resonant with what we were doing. But it's sort of like a different end product in a way, but very inspirational, you know, obviously.
Yes. So someone on Zoom has asked a question, which is, oh, wait, I lost it.
You'll find it.
I'll find it. Here we go. Michael, you talked about being protected by costumes, and David, you talked about how costumes also make their wearer conspicuous. Can you talk about the interplay between these two seemingly opposite effects that fashion can have and how they interact in the public?
Well, first of all, I often like to say that we are by default performers, so we're not in the precarious position that a lot of other gender people are in. We're not in situations, you know, that I've certainly been in when I was younger, where massive negativity came at me just for being queer. For me, I say protection because it's like putting on my laughing suit. You know, I can put something on, I can project a certain atmosphere, maybe a little bit of mystery, maybe enough to make somebody again laugh. With David, I think it's a wee bit different.
Yeah, it's I think it is, you know, it's a very contrasting experience between turning anxiety or into joy, which I think you're always trying to move towards joy, and I'm always looking like with a really, you know, philosophical eye at the things that don't work. And somehow this, you know, these costumes find a way to sort of bridge that gap and be both at the same time. And, you know, people try and figure out what they're looking at, because there are some mixed messages there. It is a very strange way to look, but it is also kind of fabulous at the same time. And, you know, I think the message that, you know, being weird can be fabulous is a good one. It's, you know, it's like I need it. It's like,
What do you mean weird? I don't think we're weird.
we are weird.
But I will say one thing, that there are two things I want to say that two of our members mentioned, because the documentary was great, because we never asked people, what's it like for you to be in the Verasphere? What's it like for you? What does it do for you? We don't have time to do that. We're too busy working on costumes and ideas. So it was kind of touching to hear different people's experiences of it. You know, we have people that are very shy, people that just, it doesn't matter, you know. But two things. Our friend Shuggy from DC said we were using joy as an act of rebellion, which I really like that one. And then Nell, our friend, lovely friend Nell, had done a fundraiser with us, was decked out, looking amazing. And she said, you know what I love about this, Michael? You walk down wherever you're walking, the runway, the street, whatever, you feel like a rock star, but then you get to go home, take it all off and just be you, which I think is great, because it made her day, it made her week. Anyway.
Yeah, that was a great question.
Well, yeah, thank you for the question.
Yeah, we have a question.
Thank you for the talk. It was super fascinating and very engaging and inspiring. So I know you've mentioned that Mrs. Vera has been to Australia. So curious about like why Australia, and then where else has Mrs. Vera been, and where is Mrs. Vera going?
That's excellent. So why Australia is because we have this wonderful entertainer friend who does a 70s song and dance. He's a very funny guy. And when I first met David, I was young enough to pull off wearing a leisure suit that was camp. So I wouldn't do it now. But I would wear these things. I find these great leisure suits really fun. Theater, pure theater. And so I was sort of the escort because I wanted us to be a couple. And then David's friend Mark from Australia came forward and said, you know, I'm doing this show, I do this, that, and the other. And I said, leisure suits, I have a room full, not a room full. So long story short, we costumed him and his wonderful singing companion, who was tiny and could wear all the dresses we bought for $5 that we didn't even know what we were going to do with. But you can see him across the room. We're like, this, get that one. So they did a show, and that sort of spearheaded us being taken to Australia several times in a row to see the shows because we costumed them and they put us up. So that's why. And then the other place, we've been to Bangkok, and we've been to London. We try and take Vera where we go, but I'll be honest, at this point in time, we're not doing it as much. But Mrs. Vera has gotten around.
And you know, a lot of those travels came about because of the generosity of our friends. We didn't really have, you know, the wherewithal to have those trips. So we were very fortunate to know some people that were, you know, at the top of their field and saw something in what we were doing and really made an effort to get us into these places, which again is like, you know, that seems like a really rare thing. You know, it's it goes to the personal involvement of what this has, the impact it has on people's lives, is that it's very real. And that's, you know, that's not always necessarily the case when you're making art, that you find an audience that you know is really you know, eat into it.
Yeah, I think we've been very fortunate that way, that it's been appreciated. And I think a lot of it, especially with our Australian friend, is like he wanted to bring us there because he knew there'd be a good response. And, you know, for me, it's more like, what does this person get out of it than what I can get out of it? And it's been incredible because we don't have the resources to go to Bangkok or Sydney or all those places, but somehow magically, thank you, Mark, wherever you are, I've been 6 times, and just like home, you know, it's like home. But we are very privileged in that way because our friend is very, very well known there, and he knows people that are well known. Since we don't know who they are, they like us.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Harry?
Painting tends to be a very solitary, isolating, often experience for many artists. They work alone, middle of the night. How has the Verasphere and the cooperative creation changed Mrs. Vera and your practices of it?
Cool.
So can we just repeat that for the Zoom king? Apparently it's very hard to hear over the computer. So the question was, art is typically very solitary, and then the community aspects of the Verasphere have kind of changed that dynamic. And the question is, how has that changed for you?
Okay, well, starting out, it's like I do most of the construction. So you make your own things sometimes, but I'm often, you know, we collaborate and talk about everything, and then I'll go make something like for him or for me or for whoever. But then that is like a fairly isolated experience. That's how I would be painting. You're just on your own in the zone doing, you know, where whatever your inspiration leads you to. But then, you know, that's how it was for the first 10 years or so. But once we met this group of people that became the core of the Verasphere, other people like brought skills to construction as well. And it's been really great seeing that expand over time as people sort of get their own signature looks, even though we always look like we're of a piece. Their individual expression is, you know, it's actually a little more important to me than my own, because, you know, I know what I'm doing. But when I see other people, you know, creating the similar kinds of things, that is a very unisolating experience and a fabulous one.
So yeah, I think basically what we try to do is complicated as those things look, is simplicity. What's in front of you? What do you want? What do you want to do? Can we facilitate that? Let me join in. I love doing that. So I don't know, my friends, if there's anything else or any more questions of our Zoom people zoomed off.
Thanks, boys.
Yeah.
Of course, thank you all for coming. It means a lot. You listen to us talk about our work. So thank you, Greg and Michael and CCTA. All of it.
Yeah, thanks to everyone here. Roland, I don't see him, but he facilitated the technical stuff. And Greg here has been instrumental in our program here. A lot of people, and that's what it takes, as you all know, to make things happen. And I heard a rumor there's going to be a fashion show coming up.
Yes.
Just saying. So we'll be here. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you both so much.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I think it's been kind of amazing to hear y'all talk about what you do in such a humble way. And then the kind of what I'm seeing kind of come out of these stories is talking about how the community comes together and lifts you two up, and how opportunities seem to just magically happen, which I would say is not magic. It's a response to the two of you giving everyone permission, the permission that you give the world and that you give the community to be themselves.
It's a healing ritual,
Yes.
to be sure.
So thank you. Thank you for doing that and for coming here tonight, and hopefully inspiring all of us to go make beautiful things.
And we have a Facebook page just for Verasphere if you want to join us. We're being cautious about it this year, but we will let people know. We always march. We usually with Open House. They're very nice people. We would march every year with different groups to get them some attention. So anyway, Pride's a ways off, but we're already thinking about our workshops. And I just wanted to mention that page in case you want to be updated. And of course, Instagram, there's a Verasphere, you know, and that's a bit of a mishmash.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Thank you.